best performance of his career, Noah? As you've thought it through a little bit now, are you ready to say it?
For a regular season game, this was as good as it's ever going to get, I think. Definitely the best shot making performance I've ever seen in person. I think of any player in that third quarter. It just kind of felt ridiculous, but definitely up there for him and ties his career high and could have surpassed it had he been left out there for those final few minutes. But everybody was kind of in awe. His teammates were in awe. The whole arena was felt like TD Garden. Felt like one of those nights you just will always remember as a Celtics person.
As we love to say on here, except this one, I think we will for sure. What do you make of the comments after? We discussed them quite a bit here before you jumped on. What stood out to me, obviously, was him embracing the fact that this is what I'm capable of. Like, I've been given this extra opportunity now, and this is, me being the best two-way player in the league. That's who I think I am here. I'm so thrilled that he finally, after holding it back for a lot this year, looked like he embraced it there. But did anything else stand out about, the interviews you guys had with him?
Here's the thing with Jaylen. He's been in the news quite a bit because he has been talking when he's frustrated. He'll quote tweet the Eastern Conference Player of the Month announcement and say SMH. Most guys are maybe texting their friends that, but they're not going public with that thought. But he's just going to say what it is he feels. And he's not really worried about the fact that now it's setting expectations where, like, hey, if you're going to complain about Player of the Month, you better come out and play good tonight, right? If you're going to stream twice a week and do salsa dancing yesterday,
And dance
you better come and
salsa.
play good. And all these other things that he's doing, he knows he's setting himself up for more criticism if things don't go his way. He's online, he sees the criticism, he sees the fans, the idea of like podcasting and all the stereotypes that come with that and just being washed, right? Like we're all online. We all know that that's how people perceive things. That's why I asked him that question, because he's having this career season on top of the fact that he's wearing his own shoe, which a lot of people thought was maybe an irresponsible decision. Who knows if the shoe's going to be good? What if it causes injuries? Like that was a discussion when he first announced that he was going to wear his own shoe. The shoe he wore tonight, I asked him about it. This is the first time he's ever worn this exact shoe. Like asked him before the scrum started. So like he's just taking risk after risk. He's streaming, on off days where nobody else is really doing that. And I think you're seeing that it's whatever it is that he's doing behind the scenes, he's pushing all the right buttons for himself, right? We talk a lot about Joe, and Joe's pushing the right buttons with his players and who he's putting in and benching Jordan or not benching guys. I think Jaylen's doing the same thing where he knows all the ingredients to having a successful season, maybe include off-court things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that he's gonna be in hiding or just say the things that sound PR. And so you can't really question everything that he's saying and doing because you're seeing the results, right? Like this was Joe said before the game, like go out there and show your opponents that take out the frustration on your opponents for being frustrated about being overlooked for that award. And then he drops 50 and guards Kawhi. Like at a certain point, like he's just walking the talk to the greatest degree I could possibly imagine.
Yeah. And I think Sherrod staking his claim in this team being able to do special things with him at the point of attack, with him being the best player on this team at the moment. And we'll see how that dynamic evolves as the season progresses here. And, once Tatum comes back eventually and all that. But, you heard him say it there too. This isn't normal for a team that went through this kind of change, that kind of injury to be in this position. And if he wants to make that credit for himself, he's earned it at this point by showing up every night and doing this sort of stuff. And I think he's even earned the ability to say, I am one of the best players in the league. You are capable of winning. Not that he necessarily said this, but I think this is the case too. You are capable of winning with him as your best player as much as anybody else, Brunson, Giannis, all the rest. Because you look at the results of this team right now, and it's not just a stacked roster. It's one great player reaching to the highest possible level on the average night this season, and then empowering other players around him. I think that's what's been so impressive, Sherrod, is that other players around him seem to be benefiting by being out there with him, from my view. Maybe the numbers don't scream that with the on-off stuff, but it looks like to me Walsh benefits from playing with him. Garza benefits from playing in the pick and roll with him. Pritchard and White get a ton of opportunities by playing alongside him. And they all help each other too. Pritchard and White empower him to a large degree as well. But this thing is, I've said it throughout this season. I've given a lot of credit to Joe too, but this is Jaylen's success this season and everything that they've accomplished here because he's been present each night and consistent each night.
Well, not only that, but he's doing exactly what those other guys want to do, and that is give me an opportunity and I'm going to make the most of it. That's what Jaylen has done. This is the first opportunity he has had to be the face of a franchise probably since high school. And yet there were so many questions about whether he could do it, whether he could succeed, whether the team would be any good. And then when you look at all the changes that this roster went through, no Porzingis, no Drew Holiday, no Luke Cornett, you go on, and you look at the guys that they replaced. It's not like they got rid of those guys and significantly upgraded in their place. In fact, just the opposite. And yet, as Jaylen pointed out in his postgame comments, they're pretty much where they were a year ago this time. As Bobby pointed out, at this point they had 25 wins, and this year they got 22. So they're pretty much the same place they were a year ago, except they don't have multiple future Hall of Famers on the roster. And when you start going through all the different factors and variables that contribute to that, to me, the biggest factor is that these guys are getting their first opportunity to do something that they've all wanted to do. Luka Garza always wanted to be in the rotation in the NBA. Anthony Simons always wanted to be on a team that was winning. Jaylen Brown has wanted to be the face of the franchise. And those guys, among others, are getting opportunities to do the things that they have not had a chance to do before. And to their credit, they're making the most of that opportunity. And that's why I think these guys connect with Jaylen and follow his lead and figure out what they need to do in order to stay on that Jaylen Brown plan so effectively, because he's doing at a much higher level what they want to do, and that's make the most of the opportunities they're given.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of them, though. I want to get back to some of his gripes here because you understand the all-star voting. If you feel like you're one of the best players in the league, sure, like that's understandable. The player of the month thing, you look at the numbers, it's close, comparable records for the teams, tossed up. It was interesting to hear White because Sherrod and I were talking about it before you got on here. No, we don't totally know how that process works, and I know White mentioned that as well. So yeah, it was a toss up. I felt like he lost it. The team was great. He was, scoring more than Brunson if you want to just look at that. So I understand that. And there's always a thing with the media coverage of him in particular, just the sport or just stars in general that he doesn't seem to appreciate. And so I think there were two things he was talking about there. One was the snub, but one was also the conversation about basketball and what's valuable and what isn't, along with the way I guess he's been covered throughout his career. And we know the examples, the trade talk, the comparison with Tatum, maybe just being overlooked in general, the Stephen A. gripes about, are you marketable, all the above. So I think we understand some of the specific examples that have frustrated him over the years, but it still seems to be there. And it still seems to be something that's personal to him. And I know you've, gotten to spend a lot of time with him and understand him a little bit more. Like, what do you think it is specifically that frustrates him in terms of the way he's covered or even just the sports covered?
It's a lot of different layers to it. From my understanding, I don't want to speak for him, but from my understanding, having covered him and been around him, I think there's the element where he is always compared to Tatum, and it's always 1A, 1B, right? He hates that question. He hates the implication that in the past he's been 1B and now he's 1A. Like, I think that's just not accurate to how basketball is played, and it's not accurate to how he sees it. It's not accurate to how Joe sees it. And obviously he's taking on more responsibility this season, and he's, tempted higher usage rate and all of that. But the idea that he's been like second fiddle in Boston for the last however many years, 9 years now, like, I don't think that he appreciates the way that's been framed. It's probably hurt his brand quite a bit. Like, you're talking about him coming in sixth in all-star voting. It's a popularity contest ultimately, right? Like he said, it's a PR contest. Yeah, it is a PR contest. That's literally what all-star voting is. But what about him has gotten to the point where he's not seen as the guy that's like going to lead that tally, right? Like you said, Sherrod, before I got on, like, he has a very compelling story, right? He has a very authentic personality. He does all these things that I think are interesting, and I think a lot of people think are interesting, but for some reason, there's still this feeling of like he's overlooked, right? Like, he's just, and I don't know, maybe it's because of that. Maybe it's because when you are authentic and you do go and complain about player of the month, like, I think the average person would be annoyed, right? But maybe some people would talk to their PR team and say, hey, you know what, don't say anything. Like that's not how you want to move. But he just does what he says. And I think that you kind of love him or hate him for it. But overall, like, wins finals MVP, doesn't get the Olympic invite. Like there's been so many things like that throughout his career. And he's not alone in that. So many NBA players are overlooked. Like I would say probably half of the league stars could build a compelling case that there's an agenda against them and they wouldn't be like delusional. Like there's biases in everybody, right? There's biases from all different angles and big market, small market, right? Like all these different things. And so the thing, I've been thinking a lot about this because obviously he keeps going online and keeps saying things about like the chip on his shoulder. And all that really matters is that this makes him great. Like when he is upset and he feels slighted, he comes out and performs the way that he did tonight. I was really curious to see how he was going to respond. And I know people online were like, who cares? That's player of the month, right? Maybe he needs something like that. Maybe he needs something to be upset about after December in which he just dominated and tore up the entire NBA. He needed to go into tonight feeling overlooked. Like, I don't know, but the psychology of that is fascinating to me. But there's so many things. I mean, let's be real. Like, I know we're in media. The media can be really, really lazy. And he's called that out a bunch of times in his career, but the kinds of questions that are asked and about the kinds of stories that are written. And there's real, we could do a whole show about the media landscape and about why that is. And I think that there are real, maybe challenges to being in media that maybe players are not completely aware of from a financial standpoint and clicks and things like that. But he's not wrong in saying that. So there's a lot of layers to it. But the number one thing I would take away from it is that this chip that he carries on his shoulder is what makes him great. And so long as he can keep finding stuff to be upset about. And you think about this, like we hear from greats all the time that they would start games and like Kevin Garnett would make up stuff that people were saying to him that they weren't actually saying, right? Like there's all this great folklore around guys feeling like they have to be, have to feel slighted. And so maybe there's a little bit of that going on too, but I think it's fair to say from us being in this market that like he has been viewed as this, like maybe he didn't deserve the Supermax. Maybe, just the narratives were always there and they continue to persist. And a lot of them have been squashed over the past few months.
Yeah, and speaking about what he's doing and what this team's doing this year, I just saw this. We'll get back to Jaylen in just a second here, but they moved past the 2024 Celtics, the championship team, in points per possession. Sean Grande just tweeted out for second best offense of all time. The best offense of all time at the moment, the Nuggets this year in terms of points per possession. So as I'm sure Denver falls back to earth without Jokic, if this run continues for the Celtics here, they're going to be playing as the best offense in NBA history on a per possession basis with Jaylen leading the charge. Does anything else stand out about the media critiques, Sherrod, and some of Jaylen's gripes in general about the way he's talked about and the way basketball is covered?
No, nothing else really jumps out to me as I think back on that. But again, I just reiterate this. I love the fact that he's raising those points. I think that's one of the things that not enough athletes, to be very transparent, do, and that is open up discourse on things that aren't necessarily to their direct benefit. Actually have conversations where there's some substance that requires back and forth discourse from them and someone else in the media. Jaylen is open for those kind of conversations. Very few players are. And players who are open to those conversations are often overlooked. And they're often, categorized as something that they're not. I remember vividly the conversations that were being kind of scurried about when I would talk to scouts about Jaylen Brown, who would make reference to him like being too smart. I'm like, wait, why the hell would you not want your basketball player to be smart? This whole thing called basketball IQ is a very real thing.
And that's the start of his career. That's the first story about him.
Right. And I never really quite understood. And when I asked them about it, they're like, it's just this feeling I've got. And I'm just like, well, I think it's more than just a feeling. But that's another conversation for another day. But Jaylen understands that for a variety of reasons, he is not given the same lens that a lot of players with his talent, his ability, his skill, and his built-up resume will be getting. I mean, think about it. I mean, how many guys his age, that young, with his body of work, are fighting to actually, not even fighting, but just aren't having just endorsements just rolling doing backflips trying to get to him. It's not happening. And he's okay with that because, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Jaylen Brown may be the most authentic player in the NBA because as much as he and anyone cares about making money and being popular and being liked, at the end of the day, he's far more consumed with being authentically whoever he is than he is that other stuff. And to me, that's his superpower. That's the one thing that Jaylen has that separates him from damn near every other NBA player. And that's the one thing that when his career ends, years from now, and you start looking at his body of work, that authenticity is going to be something that sets him apart from a lot of other guys. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and more good examples there. The Olympic snub. I wasn't even thinking about that, Noah, but sure, that's still fresh in his mind.
Probably the biggest one, right? Of like, he wins the title and then he doesn't get that opportunity. I mean, as far as like actual meaningful outcome, like everybody wants.
Everyone still talks about the booze on draft night. I think that's gonna be right there in the documentary or whatever book about him. That being the first moment of his Celtics career, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey for him. And obviously, I think we saw the height of it tonight, alongside the Finals MVP, obviously, and what he did in the championship series there. As far as the game goes and his performance, Noah, I was curious throughout what is going right for him on this level right now from what you saw. You mentioned the shot making. Obviously, the mid-ranger just keeps pouring in for him. I don't think he missed one outside of the paint in this game. Making the right decisions. We mentioned a couple of shows ago that he was going to draw more defensive pressure, and you did see that in this game. And I thought we'd be in a stretch here where it was going to be more 10 assist games, and instead we see him match his career high in scoring right after two of the more defensively aggressive game plans by a team against him this year.
A couple of things went right for him. I think early on he did get to his mid-range, he did get to the basket, and he's talked about momentum and about how he gets in this flow. I will say, I tweeted this out before the game. He literally did not miss during pregame. He's not one of those guys. He sometimes goes out and misses 5 in a row in pregame, and I'm trying to get a clip of him making a few for our Instagram channel. He could not miss pregame, and when he was asked about it postgame, he said he knew he had it. So sometimes it's just your night. But what stood out to me as perhaps the most impressive part of this performance on the offensive end was that even when he had it, and he scored 19 points on 7 of 8 shooting in the third quarter, a couple times he drove and the right read was to kick it out, and he still did. And it's really hard, I would imagine, I haven't really been in this position, but it's really hard when the basket feels like the ocean to not want to throw the ball in the ocean, right? It feels like you may as well just get it up there. And he did have some heat checks, and they went in. But he also had some great plays. There was one hockey assist that he kicked it out on a drive, and it resulted in an Anthony Simons 3. And he doesn't get any credit for that play. And he has 45 points at that point, and he's still making the right play. And that's the part that I think is most impressive about what he did today and what he's done all season, right? He's taken more shots. His usage rate is up. He's had some nights where, he's looked for his, certainly, but we've talked about it. This is the most boring topic possible, so I'll probably lose a few viewers by saying this, but it really is just about making the right read, and he has been doing that consistently. And sometimes I go back and I rewatch these games thinking, okay, was this the right read? And he always makes the right read now, it feels like. And it's just him studying the game over the past decade. And when things haven't gone his way, he's gone and, in the lab and worked with his player development coaches. And Bobby, we talk about this all the time, but every shoot around, he spends like at least 30 minutes that we can see, and we don't have access to a ton, where he's just making reads against 7 coaches that are playing dummy defense in different schemes.
And he came up with that routine.
Yeah, exactly. And he does it. And here he is in this, after getting snubbed and, feeling this chip on his shoulder and all that. And you see like the combination of the mindset and the emotions of being this guy who feels overlooked, and also the actual preparation that comes into play in the film sessions that everybody's talking about. I would do anything to sit in on one of these film sessions because everybody's been talking about what an educational year it's been. So that's what stood out to me. There was that specific play where he kicked it out, and he didn't even get an assist for it, but it resulted in an Anthony Simons 3 that was like, he's not getting carried away by the fact that he could score 75 tonight. Like he's just doing the game the right way. And Joe stressed that a lot this season too. Joe stressed that like he's played within himself, and it's not just been about the shot making. It's been about kind of their decision making more than anything else.